Welcome to Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts thinks the best opener is whoever prepares his canned food in the morning. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes, and I am joined once again for what is now an annual tradition. It is a mega podcast, super friends type situation. We are doing our our mild medium hot takes pod. First, we're doing the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, but also featuring Domonique Foxworth and Bill Barnwell. Then, if you want to get to the medium takes, you got to move to Bill's feed for those takes, the Bill Barnwell Show. And then finally, for the hottest takes, it seems only fitting that we are going to go to Domonique Foxworth's podcast.
Hottest member of this crew.
Nobody thinks that. The Domonique Foxworth Show, where you can get wherever you get pods. So we're going mild, medium, spicy for takes today.
Now, hey. I have to chime in here. You could not be talking about spicy takes and not include me. I demand to be included in this one.
Oh my goodness. For the audio audience, that voice you just heard in a truly shocking and surprise appearance that nobody saw coming is the one and only Sean Evans of Hot Ones. Welcome to the shows. My show, though, really.
Thank you for having me. I do have a spicy take or two for you guys. And I want to lead with this one. I expect that the Chicago Bears will win 11 games and take the NFC North. My other spicy take, Mina, is I expect to once again win our fantasy football league and run it with back-to-back championships.
All right, I will get to the league in a second. Bill, do you have thoughts on Sean's Bears take? I believe, I don't want to blow up your spot, but I do believe he is a Bears fan, so there might be a slight touch of bias.
Coming at you from Chicago right now, in fact.
Okay. All right, fair.
Sean, I feel like when people see you, they already start sweating. Their veins, they feel hot sauce in them. I feel like they're expecting a spicy take. And thankfully, you delivered. All of the hype this offseason has been about the Lions maybe competing for the Super Bowl, the Packers, everyone's trendy, sexy Super Bowl pick. No, you have stayed with a homer selection. You have chosen the Bears to win 11 games and win the NFC North, which I think is especially that little kick that comes in after the first couple seconds. I feel like really snuck in underneath there, topping the Lions, topping the Packers. I like this. I feel like this is an appropriately spicy take for the host of Hot Ones.
Mild take. Let's keep it real. Let's be honest. 11 wins is a mild take. I appreciate it, but the hottest part of the take is not that the Bears will win 11 games, it's that the Lions won't win 12.
Yeah.
Or that the Packers won't win 11 or 12. That's the real hot part of the take. Saying that the Bears will win 11 and win the division makes it a little, so I'll give it a medium take, but Mina knows I come with the real hot takes, and that one is weak-ish.
All right. Well, Sean, before we get to your other take, which I'm the only one who needs to address that one, as a long-suffering Bears fan, what has it been like for you this preseason, watching the prince who was promised, Lisan Caleb, as we're calling him, just completely tear it up in the preseason?
That's exactly what I was looking for. I expect that the defense will be legitimately good. I think there's maybe a question with the offensive line, but then of course the big question is this rookie quarterback. But when you see what he's done in the preseason, I love the confidence that he has. He's not shaken by any of this. He's not startled. He's prepared for the moment. And there's just very strong vibes around here. And I'm a vibes person. And I think this is probably the best time historically, at least, in recent history. This is the most optimistic, best time to be a Bears fan, before games actually start getting played. But this season, for sure, all the other ones washed this season for sure.
How quickly you forget Mitch Trubisky 2019, that magical year.
Yeah.
We're caught in that time loop every 4 years. Optimism, tear it all down. Optimism, tear it all down. But this time, we're just going to keep building.
I have a question for you, Sean. You've obviously eaten a lot of very spicy hot sauces during your time as the host of the show. Would you rather eat or partake in a hot sauce that is even spicier than the ones you normally feature, or watch the double doink on repeat for, let's say, 10 minutes?
Double doink. I literally remember exactly where I was with the double doink. I was in New York. I was watching the game with my buddy Rod, and it's just one of those sports memories that I'll just never forget I'll just never forget it. And Cody Parkey did that like a couple times. Like the fact that he was like hitting these crossbars all the time, it's like almost more impressive than if he was nailing these kicks. So it's just kind of like a poetic and appropriate way for that whole season to burn down. And then, you know, in the next season, you're like, oh, well, this is just the start. And then it was just all downhill from there. Just smoked on Monday night for the first game after that. And Nagy, like I remember he did like the Papa Bear Hallis suit the first game of the season, and then they got smoked. And then I knew that was the beginning of the end. But the double doink is just one of those sports memories that will forever be burned into my brain.
Matt Nagy, I had forgotten that time period of your life. Speaking of hot ones, Matt Eberflus, the hair, my God. Before we let Sean go, just to address his other take. Yes, he did win our fantasy. We're in a fantasy league. It's run by Tommy Alter. Pablo's in there too, as well as a bunch of NBA players, some of whom try really hard. Talking about Alex Caruso, which I know it's a little bit stereotypy. I understand he's he tries hard, but that dude is more active on the waiver wire than anyone in any league I've ever been in. And I don't think he's either made it to the playoffs or won. But yes, you won. Yes, you'll probably want to win again. And here's why, because our draft is in 20 minutes and I'm going to be on SportsCenter for the hour. So once again, I'm going to up the draft. Thanks, Tommy, your stupid league. I hate that league, but I'm still doing it.
On a Friday, you know? What a time for a draft.
Hate it. All right. Well, we'll see how that shakes out. We'll see if your Bears take is correct. But what is not in debate is that we are so pleased to have had you on this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, Sean Evans, Hot Ones. Have an incredible season. Good luck to you and your Bears.
All right. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys and we can revisit this one at the on the other side.
Spice them takes up, Sean. Spice them up, man.
All right,
Awesome.
See you guys.
That was perfect. Thanks, man. All right. Well, that was a delightful surprise. Yeah. Sean Evans. Thank you to him for joining the show and providing some. Now I feel bad because his take was hotter, definitely than my mild and medium takes.
This was last year too. We had an issue with take temperature. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to your takes. Hopefully you spice them up a bit.
Mm-hmm. You won't be hearing spicy ones on this episode. So this is the mild takes episode. These are things that we believe, willing to say with our chest, but they are not things that necessarily have to surprise people. They don't have to be. We're not going out on a limb here. We're just, all of which is my weak way of setting up my first take. So I will give my take. Bill, you can give your take. Dominique, you can go last. And then after that, you guys can head over to Bill's show for the medium takes. So my mild take, it's a take that I didn't harbor at the beginning of the offseason when I started ranking teams and offenses and defenses and all of that. But it's one that I have developed a growing level of conviction in. And that take is this. I think that the Houston Texans finish with a top 5 offense and defense this year. And before you say, ooh, wow, the Texans, everybody loves the Texans. Well, Mina's so brave, sarcastically. It's actually very, I want to start here. And Bill, you know this. You look at DVOA constantly as much as I do. It's very hard to finish with a top 5 offense and defense, correct?
I mean, yes, it is, but this is like choosing the no spice option on the menu. It's not even choosing the mild spice. Like, come on.
It's the Pico de Gallo.
You can do the everyone loves the Texans voice, but it's true. Everyone actually does love the Houston Texans. Like, I mean, would you be shocked if this happened, Mina?
I have a question for Mina on this one. Which unit are you more afraid of falling short of this one? Like, that's the question, because I think that this actually is, to me, it qualifies as a mild take. It's not the most aggressive. This sets the floor, because I do think it's very difficult to have a top 5 unit on both sides of the ball every year. So, like, that's a unique thing, and I think most people are probably cooling on C.J. Stroud more than anything than feeling that he's as great. But I do think my assumption is the offense feels more safe as a top 5 unit. But then I think about all the offenses that they're competing against.
That's
and then
why
it gets
it's harder.
So like, I think their offense is better than their defense, but playing effective defense is probably more volatile, so there's more of a chance of them getting in.
Yeah, that is where I came down on things too, and that's why I had trouble putting them in the top 5, 6 when I did the offenses pod, because there's so many unbelievable offenses in the NFL right now. I think it'd be actually a lot less surprising if they cracked defense, even if it would feel like a bigger jump because of the pass defense not being very good last year. The run defense was arguably less than the NFL. I actually think it's quite plausible. Also, great defense, as we've often discussed, is harder to repeat year to year to year, whereas I think we're going to see a lot of the same offenses we saw last year in the top 10 this year. But the way I came at this was this. I kept looking at the Texans depth chart and trying to poke holes, or thought about, like, what are things they could struggle in that might cause some problems, might cause them to, maybe not finish in the top 5 on either side. And I just kept falling short, starting with the offense. The run game last year, atrocious. Dragged down the whole unit. You have an offense coordinator who loved to run the ball on early downs. There's no way that it's worse than last year, though. Not in part because they had the least healthy offensive line in the history of football outside for FTN, adjusted games lost, but also I think defenses played them with a lot of single high coverage. They put extra man in the box, part because of their tendencies. You can't do that when Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell are on the field. So another thing I thought of, what if they face a lot of too high as defenses try to play more coverage to stop those? So last year, do you want to know where CJ Stroud ranked in EPA per play, EPA per dropback against too high? Second league-wide. He's already figured that out. And then defensively, run defense is great. Pass defense struggled. But I do think it's going to be better this year with Danielle Hunter, Azeez Al-Shaair, Derek Stingley looking like one of the best corners in football. Guys, they have all of the hallmarks of an elite team, and I think it's really hard to poke holes.
Yeah, I agree with you on the hard to poke holes part. I think it feels a bit more like, and you touched on this some, more like a gamble to project their defense to do well, because every year there's a team that has absurd turnover luck, and their DVOA and their advanced stats are largely influenced by that turnover luck. The Texans could be that team, or they could be the team with terrible bounces and bad turnover luck and still play solid defense but not be in the top 5. So I feel less secure about that than I do about CJ Stroud's bounce back. But I do want to explore a little bit about the way that you guys view CJ Stroud, because it does feel like the tide hasn't turned against him, but a lot of us have slowed and switched from CJ Stroud to Jordan Love. Like, it felt like last year before the playoffs, we were like, CJ Stroud's the next coming. He took this terrible team, which actually was better than we thought it was, took them into the playoffs, won a playoff game. We were looking forward to CJ Stroud taking this next step. And it feels like this offseason, deservedly so or not, we've switched. We've jumped off of the Stroud bandwagon and joined the Love train. Am I right, Bill?
Ooh, I think you just wanted to get Love Train in there.
That just came to me, and I'm disappointed.
Really it's better than Stroud Boy.
You liked it?
It was pretty impressive. Not
it's
gonna
better than being a Stroud Boy.
Season 4.
Well done. Better than being a Stroud Boy is good. All right, Bill. So what do you think?
I believe it just speaks to the acceleration of our take culture that we have already spit out CJ Stroud as not that exciting for Jordan Love. I will say I can poke 1.5 holes in Mina's argument, but I certainly think they're going to be a really good team this year. I would point towards, on offense, the fact that CJ Stroud had like a historically low interception rate for a quarterback. It was like a 1.1% interception, like something absolutely nuts that wouldn't be out of hand in Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady's peak. Like, he might be that caliber of quarterback year after year, but that is such an incredible outlier that I need to see that season after season. And then on the defense, you mentioned the guys they brought in, and I think Azeez Al-Shaair is an awesome addition. I think the fact that they went out and got Danielle Hunter and spent money on Danielle Hunter is great, but they also lost talent on defense. They lost Jonathan Greenard, who was really good at Crosser Will Anderson last year. They lost a bunch of pieces, and this is a defense that, by the way, and a team on the whole, by the way, I think we should mention, this is not the Lions. This is not the Packers in terms of the youth of their roster. Those two teams are extremely young across the board. The Texans have a young core, and that young core is going to be what propels them forward and makes them into a top 5 unit on both sides of the ball. But they're one of the oldest teams in football around their 3 stars in Stingley, Anderson, and Stroud. They have young players. Of course, Nico Collins is really good, but this is a team that was one of the oldest rosters in football last year because of how Nick Caserio built this team. They built it around a lot of veterans, short-term free agents, guys who know what they're doing, are professionals, and that accelerated their rebuild. But I wonder, does it leave them the kind of ceiling to make that leap maybe that the Lions made last year, or maybe the Packers made in the second half of last season, where they go from being a 9-10 win team to a 12-13 win caliber team?
I think if I was asking the question of, like, is this team going to be a legitimate, contender for years to come, Bill, I would be a little bit more wary of aspects of this build, although the young core is awesome. I mean, Anderson Jr., Stingley, Stroud, Collins, Bedell, just insane to begin with, right? But I think as far as, like, it's funny because, like, the Texans, you're right, like, we think of them as this, like, young, fun team, but they're not. It's not similar to Green Bay. They are all in on this season, as reflected in the contract that they ended up giving Stephon Diggs. So I'm really thinking about this on a one. I think they're going to be good for a long time. I want to be clear. But as far as, like, my take and what I'm betting on, it's really that they're going to be awesome on both sides of the football this season. And I think that's true. To go back to what Domonique was talking about, though, like, I do first take. So I am very accustomed to living in a binary culture. I don't know if there's a question I hate more right now than choosing between CJ Stroud and Jordan Love. It is like when people ask me to choose between Nino and Lenny. I'm like, oh, man, they're both great. They both bring a lot to the table. They both have downsides, but that's a perfect, I'm not going to do it.
It's a perfect analogy because while you won't do it publicly, we all know that you have a choice, and we all know it's Jordan Love. Between all 4 of them, your choice is Jordan Love. Like,
I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't feel that way. I love Jordan Love, but I think I think both of these, this could have been a mild take. I think both of these 2 quarterbacks are going to be perceived as top 5 quarterbacks next season. I really do.
Okay.
That seems more than mild. That seems like it, by your standards
I know.
at least.
Should I have done that?
Maybe even spicy.
One more Texans story. Okay, so this take is influenced by recency bias. I mentioned that, like, my if you go back into my offensive defense, I had them both in the top 10. I did not have either in the top 5. So, unfortunately, that affliction known as caring too much about preseason football is leaking into my analysis here. 2 things. One, watching that starting defense rip apart Daniel Jones, which is just such a bad basis to draw takes from. But, like, they had him in a torture chamber, and watching that, I was like, oh, this defense is absolutely going to eat this year. And then the other thing, and we'll transition to Bill's take after this. Little anecdote: I was at the Texans game because the Rams played the Texans in the preseason. First of all, the Texans are unbelievably deep at receiver and running back to the point where I was watching their backups, and I was thinking about, like, oh my God, Noah Brown, Xavier Hutchinson. They ended up cutting Noah Brown. A lot of these guys would start elsewhere. That influenced me. What also influenced me is right before kickoff, I was walking off of the field and I heard, look up. And I went like this. And a football was inches away from beating me in the head, but it was intercepted by Tank Dell, who, yes, is about my size, but prevented a major injury on... That would have been really bad.
That's a catastrophic injury.
Straight at the moneymaker.
For somebody on TV, that is a catastrophic injury.
Yes.
But we will not let you tantalize us with stories of near injury. Pick Love or Stroud, you coward. Do it. I know. I mean, Love's numbers, even with the bad start, his numbers are better. Just say it, Mina. Just say
Bill
it.
Barnwell, the floor is yours. Take 2.
Coward.
Dontavian Wicks has not saved Mina from serious injuries, so she has to go with CJ Stroud. Also, I just want to say one thing, and I will move on. If the standard is going to be put Daniel Jones in a torture chamber, there's going to be 27 top 5 defenses this year around the NFL. That's my one concern about this take.
There's just something about watching a defense, like, destroy a bad quarterback that I can't resist. I just can't resist it.
Let's be less specific here. A bad offense. We don't have to say a bad quarterback. The entire Giants offense is of legitimate concern here. Okay. I want to make sure of the exact wording for my take before I.
Oh my! This is set up for this is you are setting up a bad take where you have to be sure of the wording.
No.
That is not a say which just Bill. We worked on this all last season. You are great with saying things with your chest.
He
you
doesn't
put a
want to be
tie on, you get a little timid.
Okay.
He's reading.
My mild take.
Okay.
I'll say it with my chest.
Okay.
I'll get my practice for the Domonique Foxworth show on
can't wait.
Sundays. 3 last place teams, the Bengals, the Bears, and the Chargers, are gonna make it to the playoffs. So yes, I'm following our friend from Hot Ones and his opinion about the Bears. I'm throwing in the Bengals and the Chargers into the mix. 3 last place teams will make it to the postseason. Initial thoughts.
Okay, get rid of the Bengals. That's not even worthy of discussion.
The only risk there is Joe Burrow's never quite right, which, like, other than that, we think, and that Bengals, we were talking about the Bengals yesterday on my show, and that defense is a concern no matter how much we love Lou. But yeah, I do think that the Bengals getting the playoffs is less hot. The hottest part of this take is the Harbaugh quick turnaround.
The same. So that's what I want to probe here, because that's the one that I quibble with the most. The Bears, it's the division is challenging. If they were in any other division, I would feel a lot better about, and that's probably why I'm iffy on putting them in. But the case is quite clear. I mean, defense good. We saw from Caleb Williams, all of that. The Chargers. I think we talked about it on, I forgot if it was live or something. Yeah, it was live yesterday. And I asked, this was kind of mean, I can't remember who I was on with, but I said, name the Chargers' second corner, second linebacker, starting defensive tackle, and second pass catcher. Bill, it's not great. So that's where I object to the Chargers. It's not that I don't like Harbaugh. Obviously love Justin Herbert. I just think that roster is full of holes.
I love that Mina is willing to do that. Like, it's kind of an unwritten rule amongst TV people. It's like, you don't put people on the spot like that. But Mina is the one person where you're like, hey, name the backup guard for the Saints. And she is ready for that. And so I agree. Whoever you did that to, I apologize to them on your behalf, because we're just not supposed to do that.
I don't think I made them actually do it. And
Okay.
it was like a rhetorical. I asked that. And I said, it's really difficult. I didn't leave an empty blank.
I feel like this is just the revenge for the, you like Pavement? Tell me your 5 favorite Pavement songs. Like this is the reverse misogyny.
Defend the Chargers. Defend the Chargers.
Hold on, I'm sorry. My kids wear shirts that my wife buys them, and sometimes they have like old school music on them. And I have a rule. You got to name a couple songs before you can leave the house in a TLC shirt.
That guy.
You can't just be walking around in a Purple Haze shirt and you can't name no songs off of it. Get out of here. I threw out a Nirvana shirt. Like, you don't know nothing about no Nirvana. Get out of here. You just thought it was cute. Anyway, Bill, Chargers.
Domonique is that guy. Of all the people in our sphere, Domonique Foxworth.
You got thousands of shirt options. Why wear a shirt of a band or a rapper or artist? Like, you better give me the first verse of Hypnotic if you're wearing a Biggie shirt. It's just like, what are you doing? Wear a shirt of a song like you like Kendrick? Wear a Kendrick shirt. Get out of here with my rappers.
Domonique, did you ever have a nickname as a player?
I mean, not like just like Fox or Neek, stuff like that, but nothing.
No.
Nothing like the Dominator.
A Pro Football Reference nickname.
You have to be like a star to have the nickname, Bill.
I didn't want to say that.
I love my friends.
Now I think we can say you are officially the gatekeeper. I want to get that on Dominique's Pro Football Reference page.
That's a sick name, actually, for a corner, too. The gatekeeper.
It is actually pretty good for a cornerback, the gatekeeper. You can't get out Foxworth Island unless you can get past that gate. Yeah. Okay. I'll get back to the Chargers now. Right. The Chargers, you mentioned the points about the Chargers are valid, but I want to go back to the last time Jim Harbaugh took over an NFL team and how bereft the 49ers seemed before he got there. I mean, Alex Smith, our colleague at ESPN, did not want to even play for the team anymore. He left in free agency in disgust. He did not want to even be on the roster. They had players who had been disappointing for years, first, second-round picks who had not developed.
Those days. Sorry, keep going.
And then you saw what happened. Jim Harbaugh took over a team that had not had a winning season in 8 years and got them not just to a winning season, but to 13-3 and the NFC Championship game in his first year. If it wasn't for a couple of muff punts against the Giants, they would have been in the Super Bowl in his first season. And that was not with stars up and down the roster. And to me, this is a team that I wouldn't be shocked if they got more out of the talent they had existing on their roster already than they did with the prior regime under Brandon Staley. I think there are certainly holes in this roster, but when you have stars at a number of positions, which I think we all agree the Chargers do have a number of stars at key spots in the lineup, that makes up for some of those holes. You can have a mediocre second wide receiver. You can have a mediocre, second defensive tackle if you have 2 great edge rushers, a great quarterback, a great left tackle, maybe even a great right tackle in Joel.
Okay, Dominique, name the Chargers stars. Let's do this.
I mean, the problem is the stars haven't stepped up that well, but I mean, offensively, there aren't any stars except for Herbert. I mean, I guess the tackles are tackle level stars if you consider them stars. Defensively, you got Bosa and you got Mack, and then you got Derwin James, who hasn't played like a star, but we all still believe he has the ability. And I guess Asante Samuel Jr. qualifies as a star. Those, I mean, did I pass my test, Mina?
So I just Googled Joey Bosa, and the first headline that came up was Joey Bosa will wear club on hand.
I didn't say he can make them healthy. I just said that they had stars.
Well, fortunately, he doesn't have to catch the ball. But I mean, I think those are the stars. The stars on the defenses, they have guys who can make plays and tilt the game. I think
if
that
a quarterback it's worse to get sacked with a player by a club on their hand? I'm sorry, it's not funny.
It is kind of funny.
It's a little funny.
I am very dubious of the star power of this team. That's all.
Sure. I believe that Jim Harbaugh is more likely to make these stars look like stars than the former regime.
I mean, they want to run
totally
the ball.
Fair.
And I think J.K. Dobbins is a really good running back in the right situation if those tackles can do tackle things and push people around the way that Bill sounds in his say it with your chest voice. That voice is intimidating. I like
First
that.
Two headlines, J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins finally practicing in pads. Next headline, J.K. Dobbins leaves practice early. I'm sorry. I just Chargers team.
Mina, who gave Mina access to Google? we took it light on your take, and you are coming for Bill's take. And the point is, they're supposed to be kind of hot takes, and the fact that you can find holes in it suggests that the take is hot. Good job, Bill. I'm proud of you, man.
Yeah,
nice job.
3-8 in 1-score games last year.
Yeah, I do like the 3 teams you choose, and Bill's track record, by the way, of picking teams that will improve their wins record and see their losses or the opposite of improve.
Yeah, deprove. Obviously, everyone knows improve or deprove.
Brain is. It speaks for. What is your record, Bill, in doing that? Because you write these columns every year where you predict the teams that are going to go up in wins and down in wins, and it's actually like a remarkable record. So I want to give you a second to.
I think it's like 27-6 each way.
Yeah, that's
27-6 improve, 27-6 decline. So
that's crazy.
I feel pretty good. But you know what? When has believing in the Chargers ever stood anybody wrong?
That story where they got stuck in the elevator, it's just amazing that like their negative aura is so powerful it travels with them to other cities. Like that didn't even happen in LA, that happened in Dallas.
But Jim Harbaugh sees it as a plus. Justin Herbert stuck in the elevator, just a chance to prove your leadership and your mettle.
I am optimistic about the offensive line, and I'm excited to see Justin Herbert not get, pummeled. Domonique Foxworth, let's wrap with your mild take.
My mild take, guys, Jets win the Super Bowl. See that? Do I need notes? Do I need a 3-minute preamble to warm you guys up? This is how you give a damn take. This is a take. My mild take is the Jets and Aaron Rodgers win the Super Bowl. The roster is pretty loaded with talent, but is relying on some older guys who have an injury history at tackle and I guess they have Fashano to back up the tackles. And at quarterback specifically, I think we all feel confident that the defense is going to show up. So this is
Are they? Because
Are you Googling again, Mina? Are you Googling again? You
your
get off
verbiage,
who very prominently
your verbiage
is
there
not
is quite
showing up.
interesting. Yeah, like showing up is exactly what their defense or their best pass rusher is not doing right now.
Okay, their defense is not built upon a player that they didn't even have last year. So like they're going to be fine. Their defense is going to be good. I think Hassan Reddick will take them, a great addition. But I don't think their defense is going to show up or not show up based on whether Hassan Reddick shows up. You say something about Quinn or Quincy or Sauce, then we got an issue. Those guys, they're there. So the defense is going to be good. The question is, can a former 2-time or multiple, 3-time MVP Aaron Rodgers, be mediocre. Can he be mediocre? If he's mediocre, they have a chance. Can he stay healthy? Can Breece Hall be good? All those things, I believe, are the answer is yes. So yes, my mild take is they win the Super Bowl.
So, you know how like when you're learning a new language and you only have like a few words to work with, and so you just try to describe everything with those few words you know? That feels like Domonique's get up, addled brain trying to come up with takes that strictly involve the Jets and the Cowboys here. I just feel like you're only allowed to talk about those two teams. You chose one of them for your mild take.
You know what we do? We do numbers. You find a play that works, you spam that play until they stop it. When the defense stops my Jets and Cowboys takes, then we'll pivot to something else.
So Domonique kind of 8-miled us there, where he threw out the criticisms of the Jets as he was giving the Jets, thus preempting our inability to question his take. I've listened because I am also on our daily programming. I have heard these words: if the Jets are healthy, they have Super Bowl upside, a million times this offseason. So it's not that original of a take.
Hold on.
I want to quibble. I want to query that though, because obviously we all know if. No, I want to interrogate it, because I do think it's worth like setting aside the question of injury. Let's just say they are healthy. Let's start from that basis. Bill, do you believe healthy Aaron Rodgers in this offense, coupled with what we all agree is going to be an elite defense, do you see that team going toe-to-toe with, let's just throw out Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs?
I don't, because the last time we saw a healthy Aaron Rodgers in 2021, 2022, he was like 28th in QBR. I mean, he was not a good quarterback, and he's now 2 years older and one torn Achilles, more Achilles-y. I don't know what the proper verb is there.
Less Achilles,
but he's torn his Achilles and gotten 2 years older since the last time he was pretty bad at quarterback. And if you want to pin that on the receivers being young and not that good, if you want to pin that on him being frustrated in Green Bay, okay, that's fine. I'm willing to take that. But we did just see Jordan Love, Mina's preferred quarterback to CJ Stroud, blow out Aaron Rodgers' performance with that same roster pretty much last season. So to me, like, we're doing this math in our head of, okay, great defense, healthy offense, and the Aaron Rodgers who was winning back-to-back MVPs. And if he was 33, I'd say, okay, I think you can pencil him in for being a great player. But we're in the range of quarterback play now where the only guy who has been good historically at this level is Tom Brady. And even Tom Brady fell off a cliff at one point. Entirely possible Aaron Rodgers already fell off that cliff 2 years ago, and we just haven't seen it because he tore his Achilles. So to me, I don't think that even a healthy Jets team has the ability to go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs.
All right, so you guys have decided to come out here and expose to the audience my moves. I didn't do that to you. Did I say, guess what? Mina is going to name some backups and say DVOA. I didn't do that to you, Mina. I didn't call you out, but fine. And Bill,
you didn't call me out. You tried to make me pick between Jordan Love and CJ Stroud, and then insisted that I was hiding the fact that I had a preference for one of them. And
then I allowed you to move on without acknowledging that we all know that you're a love lover. And I let you guys slide, but you jump on me for all of this nonsense, and I didn't challenge anyone to name backup at any position deep in the roster, but it's fine. And then Bill pulls this move where he restates my point, but changes it. I did not say that Aaron Rodgers was going to be great. I didn't even say he was going to be good. I recognize that he's old and he's one more Achilles-y or whatever you said. Yes, I said, can he be mediocre? I think if he can be mediocre, which is what Tom Brady was in that playoff run with the Bucs, mediocre through the playoffs with a great defense, I think that they could win the Super Bowl. Reasonable hot take. And again, you're poking holes in it because it's a reasonable hot take.
But I think that your premise rests, and this is actually something I'm not trying to be a troll here. I really believe this. The premise for that take, and it's one that I've heard a lot, and I think it's not crazy, is that the Jets quarterback play has been so awful and the defense has been so great in spite of it that if you get even average quarterback play, you're going to be certainly a playoff team at minimum. And I think that's fair. However, that premise rests on the defense continuing to be a top 3 unit. And while they are stacked, they are well coached, that's really hard to do year after year in the NFL. And when I look at this defense, they're extremely talented at all three levels. They're not that deep. That's something that has struck me looking at the defensive roster. I think it's something that'll be an issue if Hassan Reddick misses games. But if you were to lose, again, we're doing the if you're losing, so obviously that's just an if. Cornerback, linebacker, safety, the whole thing, because it's such a a defense that's more about talent than scheme, I would say, and I would be worried about that.
I can't wait to go back and listen to this and watch how Mina used her voice to make it sound like she was saying something entirely profound. Like, I get it. We all recognize winning the Super Bowl is hard. Like, you could make that case for any team, all 32 teams, or whatever 4 or 5 teams you think have a chance to make the Super Bowl, you could say, yeah, defense, it's volatile. Like we said it on the first topic. Yes, I understand that. Defense is volatile.
Well, but you're talking about winning the Super Bowl. The teams with like mid offenses who have actually done that do have elite defenses. And while I do think I think the Jets can have elite defense, I'm just saying that's a tall order to ask of this defense to continue to play at a top 3 level 3 years straight with minimal injuries.
I need a pen.
And
if
I
have a pen and chew on it, I'll seem smarter.
Domonique is not even positing the idea that Aaron Rodgers is going to be great. He is saying that the defense is so good that even a mid Aaron Rodgers, a mediocre Aaron Rodgers, is enough to win them the Super Bowl, which, like, are the chances that the Jets defense improves to the point where they're the 2000 Ravens or the crazy Bucks team with like 5 Hall of Famers, or maybe even the 2015 Broncos, right? That team with last year Peyton, where they were so good rushing the passer that they won the Super Bowl that way. Like, do you think that's more likely that they get to that point and play at that point this year than it is that the Jets defense declines? Because to me, I feel like decline is the more likely of those two scenarios, even if I think the Jets defense is still really good.
You're probably right. It's more likely that they decline.
Ooh.
I will say, in defense of Dominique's take, I think also, though, it is highly possible that Aaron Rodgers is not mid. I don't think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but I don't think he's the guy I think he's going to be better than the guy we saw in 22, who, it should be acknowledged, also had like some kind of weird thumb thing. And I also think part of the reason I think that, Bill, is while Jordan Love did play better with those young skill players, Matt LaFleur was also able to like call such a well-designed offense, as I've talked about a lot, for both Love and those players. He was kind of hamstrung in some weird ways by Rodgers and his unique demands. Whereas when I look at the build of this Jets offense now, while, again, the injury concerns are what they are, if you can protect Rodgers, I think the combination of Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall, those are the types of skill players you want to have around Rodgers. So in some ways, what I'm saying is it would not surprise me if it's a better fit for him than what we saw near the end in Green Bay.
I did try to 8 Mile off the start, but I'm surprised that we've made it this far without you guys pointing out the one thing I left out, which is the biggest concern, is not physical injury. It's like what Aaron Rodgers might do or say or get into. And so, like, that concerns me more than anything, is that we got an election coming up. We got all types of things for Aaron Rodgers to get involved in.
What were the odds that we would make an election joke about one of the players in this first section and it wouldn't be a member of the Bosa family?
I was going to say, or the Stroud boys.
Oh, gosh. I thought it was going to be an old
the thing you brought up about Aaron Rodgers, like, he had a rip thing. You're right. Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old. I just turned 40 as well. I could say for sure, when you're 40, more of those things keep happening. Like, it's not like you get healthier as you get older. So I think my concern is, like, yes, we're penciling in Aaron Rodgers for more than a series of games, right? Like, he's going to play more than one possession of football this year. Can we count on him being healthy for all 17 games?
No.
Like, that is a thing that I think also comes into play here, where, like, your expectation for someone like Patrick Mahomes is probably like 16 and a half games. Like, he'll play 17 games most of the time. Maybe he'll, like, a chance he'll get injured, but it's not very high. For Rodgers, like, the expectation has to be like 14 or 15 games, right?
I think that's fair. Granted, they did upgrade their backup situation, bringing in Tyrod Taylor. I also think, God, I'm so excited to just watch Aaron Rodgers play football. Yeah. I think more than anything else, more than any team, coaching change, rookie quarterbacks, whatever, he is the player I want to see the most, because we're just making so many assumptions about what it will look like, what it won't look like. Is he going to be better? What does he look like coming off the injury? Can he be better in 22? It's all going to go out the window week 1 when they're facing the San Francisco 49ers. And I think of any team in the NFL, it's not like I anticipate watching the Jets offense the most because it excites me. I anticipate watching the Jets offense the most so we can stop speculating about the Jets offense, because at this point it feels like pure speculation, Domonique.
Yeah, it's definitely pure speculation, and I'm with you. We all need to see Aaron Rodgers go out there and play, and the best part is it's not going to end the speculation. Like, after he plays one game, then we're all going to have opinions and projections for how it's going to be for the rest of the season. If he plays this game poorly, he's going to do the RELAX thing, and everyone's going to be like, oh, he's cooked, it's over. If he plays well, then the MVP hype train begins. I don't know if I like my pick anymore. I'm nervous for what it means. I hope he stays healthy, though, because I feel like the more he's focused on football, the less he's focused on the hot takes. Let us do the hot takes, Aaron. You throw a touchdown.
All right. Well, speaking of hot takes, those were the mild takes. To check out our medium takes, which are next, you can head over to the Bill Barnwell Show feed. We will pick up right where we left off over there.
Hey guys, welcome to the Bill Barnwell Show. And yes, this week it is the annual extravaganza. It is the mild, medium, and spicy Takefest with my two old friends, Domonique Foxworth and Mina Kimes. This is a multi-podcast extravaganza. We recorded the mild takes on the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny, which you can listen to on Mina's podcast feed. Later, we will save the spiciest takes for the Domonique Foxworth show, where I, of course, save many of my spicy takes for Domonique on Sunday nights during the football season. Today, we are in the medium level. We are in the logical place. This is the right thing for me, the nuanced takes, the medium takes, the ones that we're not going to make fun of each other for. We're not going to trash each other for these opinions. We're all going to just nod our heads and agree solemnly and move on. This is going to be a 3-minute podcast episode today.
If you say so, girl.
It's going to be a breeze.
Yeah. So Mina's already kicked us off with some. Like, I can see it in her eyes. I know that version of Mina. She's going at next today. Did you do first take today? You did first take today, didn't you?
I did do first take today. Yeah,
you got a first take spirit about yourself.
It really sets the tone for the day.
Yeah, the West Coast too. It's earlier. Yeah,
you know how like your brain is plastic and the neurons can constantly rewire, or like the way you think and the connections can change. When I do first take in the morning, first thing, and it is very early, it rewires my brain for the rest of the day. I am in attack mode. I can't help it.
That's all right. We love it.
Well, we're just going to give a take. Like I said, we gave the mild takes on Mina's show today. On this episode, we're going to do the medium takes here. So I guess I should start. It's my show. I always let the guests start, but today I'm going to change that. I'm going to start. I am going to give a medium take, something that I don't believe a lot of people agree with. This might even be a spicy take by Mina's standards. By Domonique's standards, this would be more of a mild take. My take here is about the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that does not inspire any sort of criticism, any sort of controversy year after year. I believe, and this is very brave of me to say, the team that could not beat anybody in the second half of 2023 is not going to make it to the postseason this year.
Ooh.
Sheesh.
What do you think? Medium? Too spicy?
Definitely. I mean, that's medium on the spicy end of medium to me. I think, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, but like I can explain away their issues last year by pointing to the coaching staff, which is very in injury luck. Which, like, those coaches are coaches that there's a first-year offensive coordinator, and then there's Matt Patricia, everyone loves to point at him and blame. Like, those are easy issues to point to as a problem. And you can go back a season before that and see how high-functioning a lot of these same players were. And I guess they've lost Jason Kelce, which is somewhat of a concern, but they've added Saquon Barkley, which makes them a very scary offense. And then the defense still has a lot of really talented guys, not as deep as they have been historically on the defensive line, but a lot of talent on the defensive line. And then they address their secondary issues in the draft, which we know draft doesn't always pan out, but they went and got Quignon and Cooper DeJean to help out in the secondary. So it's hard for me to imagine that he completely missed the playoffs. So I give you spicy for that.
on Domonique's show, he gave like a 3-minute explanation of why he was not as high in the Eagles as he first expected. That was basically that same conversation repeated, which is why Domonique was going at so far at length to give that conversation on this show, which I appreciate, Domonique. Thank you.
No problem.
I think it is a spicy take, but I also think it's one I find myself increasingly agreeing with. I don't, whenever I'm like trying to put together my 7 for the playoffs, I find it really hard to keep the Eagles out, but I also find it really hard to put the Eagles in, if that makes sense. And usually when I put them in, it's not because it's not as a wild card. It's more often just that I think the Cowboys regress and they win the division. But this team, I still think, has a lot of flaws because I think a lot of their problems last year weren't just about coaching. I think it's very easy to point fingers and correctly at coaching on both sides of the ball. But what I saw from the defense last year, that was not just coaching. I mean, major holes, aging secondary. Dominique's point, they addressed that, but it's a lot to put on some pretty young players on that side of the ball. Defensive line is thinner than it's been in recent years. Linebacker group is still a giant fat question mark, in my opinion. And then offensively, I think people are sleeping on the Jason Kelsey thing, man. Like, it's probably just because he's a center, and this isn't just tush push. You know, it isn't just that he handled protections and all that. He's not a normal center. Yeah. He's arguably the greatest to ever play the position. So fundamental to so much of what they did in the run game. So I don't know. I could see it, like, there's pluses. I think Kellen Moore can do a good job. I do like the Barkley addition, but that's a pretty big negative, and I do have questions about Jalen Hurts as well.
There it is. Okay. I was waiting. It took you a long time to build up the courage to say what we all knew you were really saying without actually saying it. Like this, no one has ever said, you know what, this great team, they're really going to take a step back because they lost their center. It's because you think the quarterback's not as good as we all thought he was a couple years ago. Tell the truth.
Sir, I have 15 minutes from First Take yesterday where I say exactly this about Jalen Hurts. I already built up the armor required to air this take in public. I mean, I think he's going to be better than the guy we saw the second half of last season. Here, let me say this. This is it's a little hot, but, you know, let's just get into it. Bill, I started off yesterday by, you know, I was kind of enumerating some of the issues we saw with Hurts, obviously the struggles against the blitz and whatnot, but also, you know, he was less dynamic as a runner. I thought some of his decision-making was a little bit dubious, things no doubt enhanced by play calling. And I was on with Stephen A. and Kimberly Martin, both of whom said, you know, 2022 MVP season, he was so amazing, whatever. But what's more likely? That season was an aberration? Or pardon me, that season was the norm and he's just going to go right back to that? Or that season was the aberration?
Does feel like making maybe the single biggest leap in completion percentage from year to year in NFL history might not be his true level of play. And I want to be clear, I think Jalen Hurts is a really good player. I feel like we are, by having this conversation, it sounds like we think Jalen Hurts is not a good player. He is a good football player.
Oh, yeah. The first take debate was Jalen Hurts MVP. I just want
right.
to explain that. I also think, I think he's a very good quarterback.
Yes,
yeah, sorry.
But the infrastructure around Jalen Hurts a couple of years ago was excellent. He had 2 superstar receivers. The good news is they're still there. Running game wasn't necessarily great. I think he was the driver of the running game, and adding Saquon Barkley helps. But we're really not talking about the offensive line for the Eagles. And when they have disappointed, almost always it has been because the offensive line has fallen apart. There's always been injuries. Lane Johnson's been hurt, and he's already struggling with injuries this offseason. They have a new right guard, and Mekhi Becton, who is already injured, who has a long track record of struggling to stay healthy. And I just want to say, I feel like sometimes during the offseason, people latch on to an anecdote to explain things, and it is not actually a good enough thing to explain. The fact that Jason Kelsey chose the guy who's going to replace Jason Kelsey does not mean they're going to get Jason Kelsey 2.0 at center. Like, that is not, you cannot just sub in another guy, even if Jason Kelsey picks him, and expect to get Hall of Fame caliber play. And I know, like Domonique said, you don't normally talk about the center as a reason why a team might decline, but teams don't normally have Hall of Fame centers in their mid-30s. The Eagles are an exception. That changes a lot of how the Eagles are going to play on offense, I think.
Yeah, I think it's inarguable. I'm not arguing that they get get better by moving on from Jason Kelce. But I do think that there are some positions that it is debilitating to try to coach around replacing. Center's not one of those positions. Left tackle, right tackle, one of those positions. Now, I agree. Losing Kelce's athleticism is going to change the dynamics of their running game. I believe that they'll be able to call out protections. Someone will figure that out. I don't think that that's like they're going to get tricked on protections because Jason Kelce's not there. They'll figure that out. I do think that some of the pulling and his athleticism in the run game, they'll be lost. I don't think the tush push is going to be stopped because Jason Kelce is not out there. But I think that even if you take certain run plays out of the offense because they were dependent on Jason Kelce's ability, I think that's entirely different than not being able to do 7-step drops because you don't have a tackle. You can't let more receivers out into the route because you need extra protection. That's my only point, is that losing this particular player or this position is not a position that modern football is completely reliant on. It's like saying if you're playing aggressive defense, you can't figure out how to survive without a corner. Yeah, these are things. There are certain positions that you cannot replace. And my point is not to say that Jason Kelce isn't impressive. It's saying that modern football is not dependent on having an all-pro center. That's all.
I don't disagree, but if that first tush push fails,
Absolutely. I also want to point out, we talk about the coaching getting better. I just want to point out,
Vic
the
Fangio.
two coaches that the Eagles are hiring kind of got fired last year. Like Kellen Moore, I don't think he was the problem with the Chargers.
Actually, they're names that I've heard of, and Howie Roseman selected them, so they're actually perfect hires, Bill.
Yeah. So the
Au
thing
contraire,
is,
mon frère.
which you cannot. So that's the thing is I yeah, it's fine. You still got first take brain. The thing is, I think it's fair to be critical of both of these coaches and saying like Vic Fangio's history is not his recent history does not match up with his reputation. And the same could probably be said about Kellen Moore. But what you can't say is that they aren't improvements. That's the one thing you can't say. They're both improvements.
True. Fair.
So
on Sean Desai, though, I feel like we have erased the Sean Desai era from the Eagles' history. It was like Matt Patricia was there all year.
Right. Fair point.
We'll see.
Matt Patricia was the improvement. He was supposed to be the improvement. It's a tough spot
Matt'll
to be.
fix this, guys. Matt's got this. I agree with Mina. I think that my hesitation is the fact that I don't think the Cowboys are that good. I think this division's pretty bad. And it might just be a 9-8 Eagles team does decline and is still good enough to win the division. But I got to be medium. I got to pick somebody who was good last year for most of the year. I'm going Eagles to miss the postseason. All right. Enough about the Eagles. Enough about my take. Who do I want to pick on? Who can we gang up on? Let's go, Domonique.
Oh.
I want to hear your medium take.
My medium take is that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be derailed on their route to a three-peat in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Going to come up short.
You're picking the round.
Yeah. I mean, do you want me to defend my take before? Because you criticized me on Mina's podcast for 8-miling. So I'll be quiet to let you guys take shots at my take, and then I'll defend myself afterwards.
No, I want to hear your reasoning. Bill, what do you think?
So, I mean, I think it's pretty easy. Anytime you're given the chance, you go field or a team. You go with the field because football is so hard, and there's so many different things that could get in the way. But I think specifically, we remember last season differently than it actually panned out. Because the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, we think about the Chiefs as this insurmountable Goliath. They barely won all of the playoff games that they were in. In the course of the entire season, any right-minded football person recognized that the Chiefs were not a Super Bowl caliber team last year. I don't remember who you guys picked, but I don't remember anyone having any logical basis for picking the Chiefs. Anyone who picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl last year was like, Patrick Mahomes, huh? And I assume that this year, this team is set up to be better. However, they're reliant on a rookie receiver in Xavier Worthy, who we don't know what he'll turn into. And receivers who have been kind of dropped into this Chiefs offense have not really worked out in the way that we expect. Hollywood Brown, who is already injured. if they lose both of those guys, we are back to a similar offense where we are looking to see what happens at left tackle. Maybe that'll work out. We're dependent on Pacheco, Kelsey, and Rice. We're back with that offense. And again, to points that you guys have made before, they'll be reliant on that defense to come back, and that's not something that you can always count on. Defenses coming back and being as great as they were before without L'Jarius Sneed. So I think that it's still showing them the respect that they deserve. They'll have a good season. They'll make the playoffs. They'll get past the wild card round, but they'll run into a team that stops them in the second round of the playoffs, and they will not be the first team in the history of the Super Bowl to win 3 in a row.
Mina, please. The floor is yours.
I mean, I'll start with the simple, I guess, analysis that they got Patrick Mahomes has been pretty much infallible as a piece of, as an argument for the Chiefs since he entered the league. I think, Domonique, one point you made there is one that I think is sneaky important and maybe slept on, which is I have a little bit of concern about this defense. I do. I think losing Sneed is actually a big deal. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're a little bit up and down, particularly in the first half of the season. I just think, Bill, that has to be the worst offense we've ever seen Patrick Mahomes play with, right? Like, there's just, I hear you, like, Xavier Worthy's a rookie. Obviously, Richie Ice year 2. Seems like he's going to play the entire season. Yeah. But I can't be worse than what we saw last year, where it felt like Patrick Mahomes' own teammates were actively point shaving in games.
Yes, that is, I think, the biggest hole I would poke in Dominique's criticism. And I have to save some of my opinions here for maybe a later podcast in this series. But I will just say that it's reasonable to say, okay, we can't just pencil in Xavier Worthy to be a solution. We can't just pencil in Hollywood Brown because Hollywood Brown got hurt already. That's what Hollywood Brown does. He's good, and then he gets hurt. That's not like you can't pencil him in for 17 games. I agree with you 100%. But this team had the worst drop rate for any group of receivers in any season over the last decade. I mean, they were historically bad at wide receiver. And we saw that regress towards the mean in the postseason when the offense was not incredible, but it was a lot better and was enough for them to win the Super Bowl. We saw them struggle to recover fumbles during the regular season. They had like a 35% fumble recovery rate, something terrible. They got back way above the mean during the postseason and went on to win the Super Bowl. Like, I think you're right to say that last year's Chiefs, we're forgetting about how last year's Chiefs were mediocre during the regular season. I just think the version of the Chiefs we saw in the postseason is more representative of the actual Chiefs than the ones we saw during the regular season, even though it was a smaller sample.
Yeah, and that version of the Chiefs was a dominant defense with an offense that was not great, but made some plays when they needed to make some plays. Like, they were not while we do have memories of great plays from Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense, that wasn't the playoffs that we saw. And this is a very good debate tactic where you guys have put me in the position where I'm the one that's trying to prove the thing that's more likely. Like, all the things that you guys said could be true, and they could still miss the Super Bowl. Like, the Ravens were the best team in football last year, in my view. They didn't win the Super Bowl. This happens every year. Really good teams don't win the Super Bowl,
especially if they're the Ravens. They don't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and especially if you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, which tends to be the case. But it's not just an argument that you need a lot of things to go right for the Chiefs. You also need a lot of things to go wrong for teams that are on the rise, and include the team that they beat in the Super Bowl, the most recent 2 times, in the 49ers. So that team's going to be back. The Eagles might be back, and that's if they get through the NFC. Well, I guess I said they're losing the divisional round, so it's just the AFC. My bad.
That's what I was going to say. Now they've been losing in the divisional round.
I was try to bolster my argument with things that don't matter.
No, I want to throw out this question, Dominique. Let's further this. I assume if you were power ranking the AFC, you would still put the Chiefs at 1, though? Because your point is totally valid. Like, you take the field in the NFL. The NFL is crazy. Teams lose for all kinds of stupid reasons, and it's totally within the realm of possibility that the Chiefs don't repeat. I just want to ask, though, like, if you're really trying to drill down to the fundamentals of who the Chiefs are and whether or not you think they'll lose for actual matchup reasons, do you have them as like the unequivocal number one? How close do you think the other teams in the AFC are?
Yeah, I think the other teams in the AFC are close. I think I would go with the Chiefs in part for the same reason why I mocked people who might have picked the Chiefs last year is because, like your point, Patrick Mahomes doesn't really let us down. However, there are other parts of that team that I think can let them down. I think the defense was really reliant on Snead being able to handle his position so they could move McDuffie around. The best versions of this Chiefs defense is when Chris Jones is dominant and Spagnuolo has someone in the vein of Honey Badger that can do a multitude of things. I think McDuffie is going to have to be moved into more of a stationary player, which they'd lose that dynamism that they've relied on to confuse defenses and create havoc. And Chris Jones is likely going to be pretty dominant again, but we all accept that this defense isn't going to be as great. And if this defense isn't going to be as great, then you need Xavier Worthy to step up and be a true number one. Because as much as we like the way that Rashee Rice played last year, I don't see him as a true number one. And you can't rely on Hollywood Brown as a true number one. And Travis Kelce's 34, guys. He's 34. At some point, he's not going to be a viable big play option.
Bill, I feel like we can distill Domonique's anti-Chiefs take to cornerbacks matter, which is a shocking development coming from. Truly shocking stuff.
Do you disagree? Anybody want to disagree? Do cornerbacks not matter?
You lose a number one cornerback, you can't win a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. Here's what I want to do, though, because I want to envision this scenario. Because, Domonique, you were very specific about the scenario you're laying out here. You're saying the Chiefs are going to lose in the divisional round. Now, every year the Chiefs have been in the postseason, or every year with Patrick Mahomes, they have won at least 11 games. Last year they won 11 games. That was their low in the Mahomes era. And they were still the 3 seed in the AFC. So chances are, even in this scenario, they're probably winning 12 games. They're probably going to be one of the top 2 seeds in the AFC, which means they're losing at home in the divisional round. So Domonique, I want to know, who do you think is beating the Chiefs at home in the divisional round of the postseason come January of 2025?
I don't have to accept your premise. They'll be on the road. I just decided it. They're going to win 11 games and have to go on the road and lose to a team on the road. I don't know which team
it is.
Who
they listen
to?
Who's beating them? Give me a team.
To keep consistent with my previous mild take, the Jets. They're going to go to New York and lose to the Jets.
You're okay. If you pick the Jets if you actually pick them over the Chiefs, you won't.
We'll see. We'll see when the time comes around.
Yeah, we'll see.
Domonique is going to sign his contract extension on the air Monday morning after he picks the Jets to beat the Chiefs.
Hold on.
Do it.
Let's be reasonable. I think it's hard where we stand right now, given what we know. But let's assume that the Jets have a good season and the Chiefs have a season similar to one they had this year. You wouldn't pick the Jets to beat them if that's what the scenario that we were going in. You think it's unlikely. Like, you guys are making faces like this is the most absurd thing ever.
Yeah. Crazy to imagine that I would pick the guy who always wins, who I've picked to win the Super Bowl the last 3 years because I don't want to have to pick against him to win a playoff game.
Yeah.
Versus the Jets.
You know what? Here's the thing. We're doing the spicy takes on your pod, Domonique, and there's a Chiefs related take. And I have a thought that I have to save for that.
Okay.
Because, anyways, this is actually not that crazy of a take for, again, like, just because it's the NFL and stuff happens. I think, though, the take is one based on it's based on general history more than like team fundamentals, maybe, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the team fundamentals part is there are times when there are teams that we know are above and beyond. And I do think that generally we overrate the Chiefs or we have overrated the Chiefs as a team you think talent-wise this team is above and beyond everyone else? I don't. I think this team is very good, but I think as far as talent's concerned, they're not like, I don't know, like even as talented as I think that I think a lot about the undefeated Patriots. That team, talent-wise, like, hey, incredibly perfect, well-rounded team. This team, you guys acknowledge, has holes. So I think that's the crux of my point is They're going to try to make something happen that's never happened before in the 3 Super Bowls. And they are not a team that's just like far and away better than everyone else, are they?
We got to get to this later. I can't even answer that question without treading on the final take. I know. Domonique, I'm sending people to your podcast to hear the answer to that question. I don't think I can answer that.
Tell them to stay away. Stay away from my podcast if you want to hear.
We've known for a while Domonique did not want Bill Barnwell Show listeners to listen to his podcast. This just reaffirms this and puts it in color. Mina, let's finish up here. Please give us your medium take of your 3.
Okay, so I was working on my playoff predictions, and my medium take is 1, and it's an in and out. I'm taking the Steelers out of the playoffs, and I'm putting the Jacksonville Jaguars back in. And I actually think this is a medium take because, guys, have you heard anyone talk about the Jaguars this offseason? I feel like they are the forgotten team of the NFL because of the way in which they melted down last season. And don't get me wrong, it was an ugly meltdown, but prior to that season, we were coming off the playoff win. Trevor Lawrence and the offense looked amazing. This offseason, it has been absolutely crickets. Now, it's Jacksonville, so it's usually kind of crickets when we talk about the national discourse. But I am here to stand up for Duval and to argue that I think this Jacksonville Jaguars team is going to take people by surprise. I think they're going to win a lot of football games because I do believe in their fundamentals. Couple things. I'll start with the offense. Last year there was such a weird offense, and it was hard at times to explain why they were melting down because it really felt like they were melting down kind of like in the margins, whether it was like guys catching touchdowns but like a foot out of bounds, weird turnovers, bad fumble luck. It was a lot of things where I feel like they were not likely to repeat season to season. I also still believe that Trevor Lawrence is a very good quarterback. Now, I do harbor some concerns about the offensive line, but I have liked the additions that they've made. And again, the build of it is still kind of weird to me, but watching them in the preseason, I came away more convinced that Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be like an immediate playmaker for them. And then on the other side of the football, this is a defense that was like, when I went back and looked at DVOA from last year, I was shocked by how high they finished. And I think that the addition of Ryan Nielsen is going to have the Stephens looking more like they did in the first half of the 2023 season when they were excellent. I mean, Ryan Nielsen was able to gin up a pass rush with, like Calais Campbell and some yarn and sticks. Now he's got Josh Hines-Allen and Trevon Walker, who I also think is going to be very good in this defense. So I just think on both sides of the ball, you're talking about units that are at minimum above average. And I think that's going to be enough for them to win, at least 10 games.
This is my fault. I did not do a good job as a host. I put Mina's very mild medium take over Domonique's, or I did Domonique's incredibly spicy take and Mina's very reasonable take afterwards. That's my fault. Mina should have gone first. We should have built up to Domonique's very spicy take. I agree with everything you said. Like I'm finding it difficult to come up with arguments against the Jags being better. I absolutely agree. They were the 1 seed heading into that Monday night game against the Bengals, where we were expecting them to blow out a Bengals team without Joe Burrow, and instead they were sloppy. Trevor Lawrence got hurt, and it went all downhill from there. I think that is absolutely fair. Here's the only thing I can poke holes in, though. You spent that entire argument talking about how the Jaguars were good. You didn't mention a single thing about how the Steelers, who have tormented me personally for many years, are going to miss the postseason.
I'd be delighted to. First of all, I don't know how the hell they won, 10 games? They had the Pythagorean wins. I think
how is that different from any other year?
Okay, so this is partially why I felt it was a medium take, because I'm talking about Mike Tomlin not having a winning season. Maybe I should have led with that.
This is kind of.
Have you watched the Steelers offense this preseason? That's my take.
This is as strong as me going against Patrick Mahomes is you saying that the Steelers will have a losing season. Like Mike Tomlin's win record is stronger with less evidence, or excuse me, stronger with more evidence than Patrick Mahomes' success record. But I still think this is a hella mild take. Can we wrap this take up and send it to Dan Orlovsky for dinner? Because this take has not one bit of spice or seasoning.
Do you think that there is an argument for the Steelers having a winning record, winning at least 9 games this year, other than Mike Tomlin?
This is the same point. There's no fundamental argument for why the Steelers should be good. There's no argument for why they should have won half the games they won last year. And I can't put together a reasonable defense of Mike Tomlin in the Steelers other than we've seen him do it with less multiple times. And so you're putting me on the spot to try to make some statistical argument, and I can't. There's nothing to I guess the argument is that the issue that Justin Fields is better than we think Justin Fields actually is, and Justin Fields was failed in previous situations. The problem with that argument is it seems like they're going with Russell Wilson, which would suggest that they don't even believe that. So the only way that we see this pan out into something better is that Justin Fields is they unlock Justin Fields, and this offense turns out to be much better than we anticipated.
I'll try to make the argument because they torment me personally. I believe the defense is going to be good. They are old. They were the oldest defense in football last year, but some of their young players are really exciting. Keanu Benton was really good last year. Joey Porter Jr. might have been one of the best cornerbacks in football as a rookie. The Steelers hate playing rookie cornerbacks, and they still had to play him. That's how good he was. They had a Patrick Queen, that has been the biggest weakness for this defense this past few years is post Ryan Shazier injury at inside linebacker. Like they have found, to me, I think a player who's been really good the past couple of years in Baltimore. That is a defense I expect to be really good this upcoming season. And that is a lot of the battle. But in the big picture, I think the thing that we don't really understand about the Steelers is something maybe I can relate to. I feel like when I was a single person and I was on Bumble, there are times I'd see a really beautiful person on Bumble and I would just be like, you know what? I know this isn't going to happen. I'm just going to swipe left. Like I'm no point in even saying yes. No. I know my limitations. I know it's not going to work. I'm just going to just be realistic here. And I think the Steelers are realistic about their offense. Like they know they're not going to win games with their offense. They know they're not going to win games playing well on offense. They're not even going to try. Like what they're going to do is win the turnover battle, play defense. They're going to punt a ton. They're going to avoid mistakes, and they're going to win 9 or 10 games because they are going to win the turnover battle over and over and over again. They know not to try on offense. So when you talk about how the preseason offense has been bad, I'm not concerned because their regular season offense is going to be bad. It's just not going to be bad in the way that costs teams games.
I heard them say something about maybe there'll be a package for Justin Fields. Just the worst sentence I've ever heard. When has that ever worked?
Wasn't he returning punts at one point this offseason? I would argue the only time it's ever worked is Taysom Hill, right? Like Taysom Hill is the only time
it's worked for Taysom Hill for sure. It's worked to get Taysom Hill paid year after year.
Tell that to the Saints fans who had to watch him come on the field whenever Drew Brees was still on that.
Yeah, that was when they went from the Taysom Hill package to the Taysom Hill offense. That's entirely different. But I guess the Steelers, you could think of Slash, the Cordell Stewart years. I don't know. It's hard. You arguing that Patrick Queen is going to somehow lift this defense to levels high enough to make them good. I appreciate the effort, but I think Mina has milded us with this take that no one is really scared of because no one believes in the Steelers. And we do recognize that a lot of Trevor Lawrence's shortcomings are easy to blame on the people around him and assume that those will be their fault going forward.
Charlie had a very astute football point that he wanted me to mention, which is to Bill's earlier analogy. Have you seen Lana Del Rey's boyfriend? Anything's possible. Thanks, Charlie.
I don't know who that is.
Yes,
I'm
that's
laughing,
very
but I'm not
fair.
cool enough to know who Lana Del Rey is or her boyfriend. I'm going to Google it.
Name 5 of Lana Del Rey's favorite songs, Dominique.
Charlie saw the makeup of today's show and thought, finally, I can work in some of my references.
Mina, do you think the Jaguars have a realistic chance of winning the AFC South?
Well, I did start my
Yes.
podcast by saying the Texans have a top 5 offense and defense, so it would be logically incoherent for me to argue that. I just think they're going to be. I'll start here. I think they're going to be better than the Colts, and that the Colts feel like the kind of buzzy team that everyone's really excited about. And to be clear, I'm excited to watch them, but I think the Jags have a better football team.
Yeah,
honestly, I do. Better defense, and Colts offense, I think, it might be a little bit more volatile. I like their skill players a lot, but I'll take them. So if I'm breaking down the AFC, then, you're going up against the Browns, Jets, Dolphins, the Bengals or Ravens. But I think the AFC West is probably going to send one, as I said. So I think they got a shot.
Yeah, I do too. Domonique, you're on board? Jags?
Yeah, I'm on board. It's the first consensus of all the takes that we all agreed on. Congratulations, Mina.
All right. We will see if we can all be on board for a spicy take as we finish up the podcast extravaganza, the 3-part series on the Domonique Foxworth Show. So check out the Domonique Foxworth Show feed for our spiciest takes for the upcoming 2024 season. And of course, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Bill Barnwell Show.
Off top, 900,000 years ago, our human ancestors lost 99% of their population, coming close to extinction. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. This is a continuation of the 3-part second annual Hottest Takes podcast. I'm sure you've already caught the mild takes on Mina's podcast. If you haven't, go back and check them out. If you haven't caught the Bill Barnwell episode, the mild, medium takes, go check that out. But not before you finish this episode, the spiciest of all the spicy takes on the Domonique Foxworth Show. We are joined. This is the only, while Mina's show boasts that it has Lenny, this is the only of the 3 podcasts that actually has the special guest of young Linus.
Only has spicy takes. That's why.
Yes.
All right. So where do we start? I assume that I left a little bit of time there for Mina to make fun of my off top because it's one of the things that she likes to do. But I guess today she's feeling kind and generous.
Interesting.
So it's the only one that's legitimately interesting. Thank you. I'll find a way to take an insult out of that. All right, I'll start since I'm the spiciest. I'll start with the spiciest take, and it's my show. Caleb Williams wins the MVP of the entire league, which only happened once before with our guy, Jim Brown. That is a spicy take. Now I've set the tone for take spiciness. What do you guys think?
Seems unlikely. Let's start there. There's there's 2 ways of looking at this, talking about kind of what we expect out of Caleb Williams and the offense, and then there's kind of more MVP analysis. And I think, and I say MVP analysis, what I mean is like talking about what it takes to win the award, who tends to win the award, why so few rookies, if you alluded to have won the award. I guess I'll start there before we get to the actual Caleb Williams of it all. Given that CJ Stroud broke records as a rookie and wasn't even thought of as a legit contender in a year, by the way, in which it kind of went down to the wire for Lamar Jackson, Caleb Williams would have to be better than that, unless all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL right now, your Burrows, your Allens, your Jacksons, and of course your Mahomes, and Stroud, if they were to all be sort of up and down. So you'd have to have the combination, I think, of them being up and down and then Williams having this unbelievable record-breaking season.
One difference I would say between Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud, I think the MVP award is often about expectations and how you live up to those expectations. I think the assumption is that if you overshoot the expectations, that's probably good, but I don't think so. I think the MVP in most cases is an award that comes with a little bit of hype. And CJ Stroud had a long distance to cover. If CJ Stroud entered the league as the second coming, number 1 overall pick, a guy who teams have been kind of waiting for years in the way that had a couple of Heisman trophies under his belt. I think the expectations are different, and it does give you a chance. So if Caleb Williams, if last year completely repeats itself and all the quarterbacks have underachieving like years and the race seems open and Caleb's able to do something close, but probably has to be better, which isn't crazy than what CJ Stroud did, then I think he's in the conversation, in part because he enters as a number 1 overall pick with this type of hype in a major city with history around it that has never had a quarterback. I think that it is obviously a long shot because it is my hottest take, but I think the pieces are there, in part because of the thing that we've been saying about the Bears all offseason ad nauseum is, yeah, this is the best situation a number 1 overall pick has ever been in. And this is possibly one of the best number 1 overall picks we've seen in a long time. Bill?
I simultaneously want to argue for this take because I do like it. It is a good, spicy take to put out there. But I also want to argue against it from the team perspective. So I'll just say this. In terms of it being unprecedented, yes, no rookie has won an MVP since Jim Brown. But Patrick Mahomes was not a rookie, but for all intents and purposes, a rookie when he won MVP. He had started one NFL game before that, and he had an incredible group of players around him. He had, I believe that year I had them number 1 in my playmaker rankings around Patrick Mahomes. They had great players at running back, receiver, tight end. Of course, they had Kelsey. They had multiple Hall of Famers in their prime, which I don't know that the Bears have, but clearly the Bears have an excellent group of playmakers around Caleb Williams, which goes a long way in helping make Caleb Williams play better. But one thing that is often true, I would say almost always true, I can't think of maybe Adrian Peterson is the last one I can think of, but you need to be on a team that is really good to win MVP. Like, you need to win the division. You need to be probably one of the top 2 seeds in the NFC to pull that off. And I like the Bears. I think the Bears are going to make the postseason. Do they really have a 13 or 14 win season in them though, Domonique? Do you really think they can do that if Caleb Williams is the player you're expecting?
Well, obviously, I think they can. Is it likely? No, I think the odds are against it. But yes, I absolutely think it's possible. When we do that whole roster thing where we go and look for major flaws or major issues, there are some like question marks, but there aren't like major, like this team is not going to survive because of this particular problem. The question is, how much responsibility are they going to put on Caleb Williams? And is he going to be able to live up to it? I think the other factor that you have to, or the other thing that you have to factor into the MVP race is those kind of wow Heisman moments. I think a lot of these things that you need to have for an MVP race, Caleb Williams is going to be able to reach those check marks. I think we all agree that even if Caleb has a mediocre season, he's going to have some plays that we're going to be talking about like, damn, blow our minds. And that's going to get their attention. And I also think the factor that it happens while we try to pretend like the internet has made it so it doesn't matter where you are, it matters if you are doing something special for one of those franchises like the Bears in a major metropolitan area. So I think you guys are right. It's hard to do. And one of the things that cuts against my argument is it tends to be the case that you only get one award. It's like if we're going to give you the MVP, we're not going to give you the Offensive Player of the Year, which kind of seems absurd, but that often is the case. Or if you get the Rookie of the Year, you're not going to get the MVP. Or Comeback Player of the Year, we're not going to give, like, it's tends to be that way. So I think once Caleb has a good season, that I think we all agree he's going to have at least a good season, would be our expectations, he's going to get the Rookie of the Year. And they're going to assume that, oh, we can't give him the MVP. He'll get that later on. Yeah. Right now, he's a Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I think it would take that and then some slips from the aforementioned top quarterbacks, which is not a lot of slips, because there's a lot of really great quarterbacks right now in the top 6 or 7 between the I don't have the MVP odds in front of me, but if I had to guess, I would probably be Mahomes, Allen, Burrow in some order. Jackson's hard to repeat. Love and Stroud in the mix as well. I think I saw Herbert, but you guys know, I already said how I feel about the Chargers. I don't see that happening. So that's tricky. I'm looking at the Bears schedule because Dominique, as you mentioned, MVP is such a narrative award, right? And it does matter that Caleb has crazy plays, and it does matter that he plays on the Bears and he has this like horrible, tragic history when it comes to quarterbacks. Right. Week 2, they've got the Texans on Sunday Night Football.
Ooh.
Where I think, Dominique, you're onto something here. If he balls out in that game and beats CJ Stroud, book it right now. Get Up on Monday Morning is leading with Caleb Williams MVP. It's happening. And it's week 2, and it's obviously insanely premature. And then they're not in prime time again until like Thanksgiving, actually. Wow. Well, there you go. That'll be another big one. No, sorry. Pardon me. They're playing in the morning on Thanksgiving. That's a big game. I'm telling you, though, that's one I'm watching for this purpose. If he balls out in that game, I think then it'll be introduced as a possibility.
This is not a tough schedule. I mean, it's Tennessee, Houston, Indy, the Rams, the Panthers, and the Jags before their bye. So let's say the Bears start like 5-1, and Caleb is just balling out. He's got like 15 touchdowns, 2 picks. That could be a thing where, okay, like we have to reset our expectations so quickly that he does get MVP consideration. So I kind of feel like the more we talk about this, the more I like it.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, 5 MVP winners have started the season with plus 3,000 odds in the past 9 years. Ended up winning it. Caleb Williams has plus 3,500. So he falls in that perspective. So it's possible. I like that. I'm very surprised. Like I'm almost giddy right now because I expected to have you guys pile on, but I think what I figured out about this, the way this dynamic works, is it seems like all of us want to do the hard thing, and now it's like, you know what's attractive? Trying to figure out how to make this work is more fun than on it.
I also think MVP is just so, like, the way it's determined is hard. It's like I don't want to keep going back to its narratives, but it's about narratives. It's about big moments. It's about a certain kind of team that wins. You know, he does actually fill a lot of those, check a lot of those boxes. I think where I would probably there's 2 things that give me pause. It's just, again, the surfeit of like really, really good quarterbacks, and then I am skeptical that the Bears are going to win enough games to put him in that conversation, but it's not outside the realm of possibility.
I think the hardest thing for me, the scariest assumption that I have, is that he's going to put up numbers that are better than all of the really good quarterbacks. I think that's the scariest, because he's going to have to win more games and put up more impressive numbers than not just Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, who's injured now, but still will probably put up some numbers, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, like all of these guys are going to have to, and some of them are in situations, Joe Burrow, some of them in situations where their teams may not win as much, so they'll fall back in their numbers. And I think Josh Allen, by design, they are trying to limit the amount of passing attempts he has and numbers that he puts up, because Josh Allen's another player who I think is probably, he's in a situation, in a narrative spot where
overcoming
it's time to give him an MVP.
Trade away their best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's probably the scariest one right now, because if they turn out to be pretty good, Josh Allen, and he's been really good for a number of years now, Josh Allen is probably the front runner in my view.
This is like Josh Allen's Russell Westbrook, where it's just, okay, it is all on your shoulders. You are getting the ball every single possession. You have to figure this out. You're going to have crazy numbers. To me, I would not be shocked if Josh Allen won MVP if they were a competitive team.
What's the NFL equivalent of a triple-double where like the nerds hate it and announcers love it? Is it
300,
like
300 and 100?
Yeah. Well, but that means something. It's more actually like running back yardage. I feel like a running back having X games where he gets over 100 yards.
Yes.
I think it's it's probably something about running the ball. It has to be something about running the ball. The last thing I'll say is I don't think he has to worry about Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson is in that situation where he has to have a ridiculous, coming off of the MVP season that he won last year and losing in the playoffs, he'd have to have a ridiculous season to get MVP consideration. again after he had 2 MVPs and no major playoff wins to speak of.
I think outside of Allen and Mahomes, I would take Love and Stroud over the other elite guys. For again, not because I think that they're
Love
and
to be
Stroud,
huh?
Not because I think they're
Love
going to
or
be better,
Stroud,
but I think both of them have the stories right now and the momentum, and I also obviously think they're amazing.
Well, I'm glad that we settled that. Wins are quarterback stat. We cleared that up because clearly it's something that you guys cared about in discussing this conversation. So let's go to Mina next. We might need a little palate cleanser after my aggressive take before we get to Bills. We'll go to Mina, the queen of easily defendable mild takes.
This is like when you start with fried calamari and then have a salad before your steak. I just thought it would be interesting to talk about. My hot take is that by midseason, Davante Adams is a Washington Commander.
Whoa! Eyebrows singed. Gosh. I don't know if I'll survive.
Okay, I wanted to do Davante Adams.
It's a Washington
I wanted
Commander?
to put him on the Lions, which I thought would be a truly stunning development and tilt the NFL. I just don't think the Lions move that way. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't think. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Bill, before you go? Is this coming with the Commanders will be a contender? What is this like?
Yeah.
Davante Adams moves from one irrelevant franchise to another franchise that does not project to be
confuses.
Yeah, so I'll clarify. The subtext of this is I think the Raiders are going to be a bad football team.
Yes.
And while I don't think the Commanders, I don't have them as a playoff team, I think by midseason they will have won enough games and seen enough with Jaden Daniels where they want to invest in him midseason. And the thing about Davante Adams, guys, because I was thinking about which teams would trade for him, and you're tempted by teams where it's like they just need the final piece, whether it's like the Ravens or the Bills or the Jets or whatever. But his contract is actually very, I think, attractive to a team that wants to keep him around for some time. It's very tradable. I mean, it's $35 million a year after this season, but that's all salary, so you could trade for him, restructure it, keep him in the building for a long time. And I still think he's an incredibly elite wide receiver. Obviously, he was not thrilled with the situation in Las Vegas last year. But the Commanders strike me as a team that have both, they're going to be just feisty enough to want to do this, and I think they're also going to be motivated to improve the circumstances of their young quarterback.
This feels like the challenge here is, can we find a way to add enough spice to this take to make it spicy, but still use the seeds of Mina's take? I've found the challenge in this. So this suggests to me that the Commanders are having enough success that they want to make a push. So Commanders make the playoffs? Commanders make the playoffs, maybe?
I don't think that they have to be a playoff contender to do this trade, I guess is what I'm saying. I think that they're going to I think
so Jaden Daniels shows enough that they're encouraged. Okay. So Commanders make the playoffs next year.
But let's hit the Raiders side of it first. Do you guys agree with that? Because I kind of just said that really quickly and moved on. Do we agree that the Raiders are going to be bad enough to where it makes sense for them to trade Davante Adams?
Oh yeah, that is not a concern for me. Criticizing the Raiders, that is a easy victory each and every season. The defense was actually good second half of last year, and I think they are going to be feisty with Christian Wilkins. I think that is going to be a fun front to watch. But this team has been bereft of young players for so many years. They have just a decade of failed first and second round picks with very few exceptions. And you cannot convince me that their core, the players they've signed, are good enough to be a even 8-win team in the AFC. And I'm pretty high on Gardner Minshew relative to everyone else. I just do not think this is a good football team. And I absolutely believe they could be trading Davante Adams at the deadline. Even as someone who's optimistic about the Commanders, it's tough for me to see the Commanders being that team. Now, I do think, to your point, look at what they've done this offseason. They have not just been, hey, let's bring in young players. They went out and signed Bobby Wagner to play on their defense. Like, they have been willing to go out and go after veteran players. For Davante Adams, a player who I believe turns 32 during the season. Like, wouldn't you rather just wait for T. Higgins in free agency next year and try to win that bidding war?
I think it's interesting, the T versus Davante question, right? Because I mentioned, so Davante, it's $35 million a year. I'm thinking you restructure it. I kind of think that you can probably restructure it in a way that makes it more team friendly than a new T. Higgins contract. Mm-hmm. The challenge with the Commanders is that Terry is going to be up in a year. So this was something that came up when they were rumored to be trading for Brandon Ayuk. I was like, ooh, you trade for a guy, give him a giant new deal. I don't know about that. That to me is like the biggest issue.
I think the most interesting part of this take, or the portion of this take that I find the most intriguing, is the Jaden Daniels portion of it. Like, whether you see them going to get him or not, what you said and what you're projecting by making this is that Jaden Daniels is going to be a hit. He's going to be a hit enough that, like, because this is the move that we've essentially seen the Texans do. It's like, oh, we got a rookie quarterback, or we got a quarterback on a rookie deal. Time to load up. So projecting that Jaden Daniels is going to be that good enough for this team to go all in, is exciting. And as someone who lives in D.C. and works with a bunch of Commanders fans, optimism's hard to come by around here. And so there are people lighting up listening to this podcast, DC natives, who are excited about the idea that Jaden Daniels, A, is not going to throw his body into defenders and break it, and B, is going to be good enough for Adam Peters and this team to decide that it's time to start spending that excess cash on proven players to surround our young, talented quarterback.
Can I ask about something? Speaking of spicy, how excited would you be to see Aaron Rodgers' reaction if Davante Adams is available at the trade deadline and the Commanders beat the Jets to the punch to trade for him?
Video audience can't see Lenny's face right now, but this is how Aaron Rodgers would react.
Lenny looks disgusted by that.
Paint a
Is Lenny
picture.
secretly a Jets fan?
Lenny is not a fan of mine. I have had personal interactions with Lenny, I feel like, have not gone well. I imagine on Zoom does not like me, so not surprised Lenny is disgusted with this take.
All right. My take sucks. I get it.
No, I like it.
No, we workshopped it. Your take is no longer Davante trade. Your take is Washington found their quarterback, their long-term answer at quarterback.
I feel like I am more optimistic about Jaden Daniels than some of the guests I know I've had on my podcast. The injury concerns are what they are. We'll see how all that plays out. And I've expressed fears about this offensive line, no doubt. But I think he has a skill set that does lend itself really well to the modern NFL. Whether or not Cliff Kingsbury gets the most out of him is an open question.
I mean, as someone who thinks the Eagles are going to decline, as you could hear about on my show, as someone who thinks the Cowboys are going to decline, as someone who thinks the Giants are going to decline, like, somebody's got to get better in this division. So kind of by default, I'm leaning towards the Commanders being that team that improves.
I like it. Commanders win the division. Mina's take, we just spiced it. That is delicious now. It was boring. Now it's yummy. All right, Mr. Barnwell, close us out, sir.
All right. This is in direct response to Domonique's take on my show. The Kansas City Chiefs will become the third team in the history of the National Football League to win 16 regular season games. Yes, the Kansas City Chiefs will go 16-1 during the 2024 regular season.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please.
Is this one actual loss, or is this them sitting for the final game because they're preparing for the playoffs?
Ooh, the Colts, the 98, or what was it, the 2008 Colts, the Peyton Manning Colts, where they just pulled their guys against the Jets. No, this is a real loss. I will even, as a predictive wizard who's picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl each of the last two seasons, a Chiefs expert, I will even give you the game they lose They will lose.
Oh,
I'm looking at their schedule right now.
At Buffalo, week 11. They will start 9-0. They will lose to the Bills and then win out the rest of the way. They'll blow out the Steelers in week 17 to knock them out of the postseason on Christmas. Make my Christmas by finally giving Mike Tomlin a losing record. They will blow out the Texans in week 16 to end CJ Stroud's MVP take. They will finish 16-1. I didn't say they'll win the Super Bowl, but I did say they will go 16-1.
yeah, I noticed that.
Okay, so it's easier to just say this is not going to happen because it's so hard to do in the NFL. But
That's
I'll
why
be
it's
honest,
spicy.
I am going to pick them to win every game unless they start the season and there's injuries and things don't look whatever. It could be reasons, but I'm saying right now I'm looking at their schedule and I will pick the Chiefs every single week right now. Now, just if you really asked, like I've really pushed me to make these picks. Now, if you were asking me to like give an actual prediction for the season, I will throw in a few losses because it's the NFL and that happens. But I do think, and this cuts to the discussion we had on Bill's podcast when Domonique brought up the Chiefs, and I asked, there's about sort of their fundamentals. I think fundamentally they are the best football team in the NFL. Now, a lot of that is because of the outsized importance of the quarterback position, no doubt. But even separate from the quarterbacks, this should be a top 10 defense. So you have the best coach in the NFL, the best quarterback in the NFL, and a top 10 defense. Like, it's just really hard to quibble with that combination of words.
Yeah.
It's absolutely very hard to quibble with that combination. The pushback I would have for you, Bill, is I think the teams who do that, and we're going to end up having the same conversation that I think we had on your show, a version of it, when I said what I said about the Chiefs. I do not think of them as head and shoulders above everyone else, because my view is in order for you to win 16 games in a season, you have to be good enough to overcome a number of bad games. So like you are going to be 10 points better than everyone, 14 points better than everyone. But the game when you have the bad turnover luck, then you're going to win that game by 6. You're going to win that game by 4. I guess that's my problem is I think that the Chiefs are better than every team that they play, but I don't think they're so good that when they have that game of horrible luck and all those things go wrong and you have a dropped interception in the back of the end zone that ends up to be a touchdown and your quarterback fumbles a snap. Like when you have those 2 or 3 games this season, they are not so much better than all the teams on their roster or all the teams on their schedule that they'll be able to overcome that 3 or 4 times this season.
I think you're underselling that because I don't think you realized how unlucky they were last year. Like last year was the year where they managed to be 11-6, even with a terrible fumble recovery rate, even though they had a negative
Kadarius Toney offsides.
negative 11 turnover margin, even though they handed the Lions a victory with a drop that turned into a pick 6, even though they couldn't line up straight, even though they had the worst drop rate at wide receiver the last decade, even though they had multiple games where the Chiefs dropped touchdown passes that would have won them the game. I think they were incredibly unlucky last year. And like just the simplest numbers I can come up with. The Chiefs were 15th in the NFL in points scored last year. They were 2nd in points allowed last year. Their defense was phenomenal last season. Their defense was playing at that level a year ago where they were significantly better than just about anybody else in the league. And yes, they have lost L'Jarius Sneed. I think that is a legitimate concern you brought up on my show, but I believe that all the improvements they made on offense and the core of players they have on offense is so strong that it's going to be more than enough to overcome the loss of L'Jarius Sneed. So when you factor in average luck, maybe they get a little lucky in some stretches. I think this for a 16-win team, like you said, you don't win every game by 14 points. You don't have like the Pythagorean expectation of a 16-win season. You have a 13-win season and you get lucky. And I think the Chiefs are going to be a lot luckier than they were a year ago.
They did have the 6th best injury luck in
That's
the
true.
NFL last year. And I think if I were to envision a world where, forget 16 game, just the Chiefs kind of fall off at all, it would probably be if Travis Kelce gets hurt.
Yes.
I suspect they're going to load manage him like they did last year and try to mitigate that to some degree. But either him or Chris Jones on defense, you know, and I like George Karlaftis has been awesome, and I think they have a lot of really good role players on that defensive line. But I think if they were to lose either of those two players for any significant amount of time, certainly 16 games would be up in there, but maybe more than that. Before people who are not fans of the Kansas City Chiefs throw up so violently and stop listening to this that they have to pull over, let me ask you guys a question, just football-wise. Who matches up best with the Chiefs in the NFL right now?
Is it wrong to say the Bengals? Is that like the easy, boring answer?
Over the Niners?
I think that's wrong.
I don't think
I don't think that's the easy, boring answer. Is I don't actually think they match up well. Like I think it's partially, and this is probably the most insulting thing I could say to Bill Barnwell, so I apologize in advance. But that doesn't feel like it's based on anything other than we saw Joe Burrow do it once.
More than
right?
once.
Like that defense doesn't give me that one time in the playoffs. Like that defense doesn't give me any confidence against the Chiefs offense.
I'm going to say in that same division, I still think it's the Baltimore Ravens because I think to match up with the Chiefs, you got to run the ball and you got to stop the deep pass. Literally the best at those two things. Domonique, I mean, am I wrong? You agree?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I didn't want to say it because I feel like then again we get hit with but we saw them in the playoffs last year. Yeah, they lost to in the playoffs last year, but they added Wiggins to the secondary. Like they have quite possibly one of the best secondaries in football. They have a linebacker who you feel comfortable against doing just about anything. I think the questions around the pass rush are fair, but Matabike in the middle is a problem. I think that and if you want to be critical of them last year in that game, it's hard to be critical of the defense, the way the defense showed up. And maybe you say it's because the Chiefs weren't taking shots, but that defense was good. And to your point, they added Derrick Henry to that potent running attack. I do think that they match up best against them right now.
The thing is, I don't think, and Bill,
offensive line stinks though.
I don't think it's I don't think they're going to match up with the best with them week one. I think it's going to be they match up best with them at the end of the season because the offensive line, there's so much turnover. You got a new defensive coach. Wiggins is a rookie, but by week 18 playoffs, then I think that team will match up well.
We found the spicy take, which that Mina thinks the Ravens are going to be better in the postseason than they will be in the regular season.
Don't hide from the camera now, Mina. Get your back over.
It got spicy at exactly the right time.
I do think that. All right, I'll stand on that.
No, I don't think that's wrong. In theory, I agree. It does make sense. If you're going to beat the Chiefs, you want a team that can run the football. But think of all the great running teams that have played the Chiefs and how few of those teams have actually pulled it off. The teams that have beaten the Chiefs have been teams who can throw the ball. The Bengals, the Bucks, the Patriots with Brady. Like those have been teams. They have the Bucks running game was terrible. They didn't win the game because of that at all. I think that is a thing that makes sense on paper, but does not actually make sense and play out in reality because it's so hard to get a big lead on the Chiefs.
Well, the Bucks won because Patrick Mahomes was like.
Yeah, I was going to say the D line of the Bucks or the O line of the Chiefs is the reason why that game.
Like you have to have a defense that can be really good. And I think the Bengals, what they did was not beat them with a great pass rush the way the Bucks did. They beat them by having a very creative defense and slowing down Mahomes after the snap.
The other question I have for you on this take is. Bill, and we can shut it down after this because we lost Lenny, so that means that we must have moved on from the interesting parts of this podcast. Is this team does not going 16-0, or winning 16 games, winning that many games for a team? It seems like it has to be a goal. And that doesn't seem like, with history on the line and given what they did last year with Travis Kelce, this was a team that was obviously load managing to some degree for the playoffs. This is a team that that's in a division that we don't suspect to be highly competitive. It's a team that feels comfortable going on the road in the playoffs, that their highest priority, I would think, is to be healthy and to be playing good football at the right time of the season. I don't think that this is a team that is going to approach every game all
point.
season like we have a point
Yeah.
to prove, right? This is a team that's like, we got to get to the playoffs and do something that's never been done before. And if we lose here, we lose there.
Right.
We've been here before. We won the Super Bowl back-to-back seasons. We're not gonna I was about to make a terrible pun, but we're not going to put it all out there earlier this season.
No, there's just going to be a game where they're like, let's just have Patrick Mahomes lateral the whole time and see how it goes.
They're definitely going to mark one of those Raiders games.
The Raiders give him trouble.
Where
they won. They beat them last year.
Yeah, that's fair. I
have not been an NFL player, unlike one of the people on this podcast, so I cannot speak to what it's like to be in a locker room after a bunch of victories.
D-tackle.
But if they start 7-0 and we start having that conversation about them going undefeated, are they really going to be like, we don't care, we're good, whatever? I think if they get on a winning streak to start the season and start 7-0, I think the idea of being not just the team to three-peat, but the team to go, first team to ever go 17-0, might just be appealing to a team that's already won 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The idea that it's a conscious decision is different than there are some things that you just can't fake. And that's what happens. Like, there's never a game that anyone's going into like, we don't, well, maybe in other sports, but in football, there's not a game where like, we don't really need to win this. We're coming off a back-to-back. Let's stay healthy. Let's be like, that's just not how you approach it. And I think the coaches the coaches are a big reason why we like this team. And I do know that coaches do hold stuff back. So I think that's more what's going to happen than anything is like, we see something we like, we're tuck that away for the playoffs. And I think that there is some bit of just psychological letdown that happens when you are accustomed year after year play high profile, big time playoff games. It's real hard to then show up with that intensity when you came back-to-back seasons, miraculous Super Bowl wins. It's really hard to show up a random game against a team with the same intensity. And I can honestly admit and I'm not the Chiefs by any stretch, there are games that I played my best, but I showed up like, all right, we got work today. Let's get this job done. Let's beat the Browns and get home. And it's not like, it's homecoming. We got to beat our crosstown rivals. It's like, nope, let's go. They're not going to put up much of a fight. Let's put this away and go home.
If there's any team that's not going to hold stuff back for the playoffs, it's the team that literally was just running a behind-the-back pass during the preseason. Like, if Andy Reid's got an idea, I don't think he has that level of temperament and patience. It's coming out in the playbook that week.
I don't know, but this Patrick Mahomes guy seems pretty chill about winning, so, I mean... It doesn't bother him at all that he was the 4th-ranked NFL player or whatever. That's a joke. Nobody say that. I'm arguing that it is going to motivate Mahomes to be better.
So you guys, I feel like we got on board with Domonique's take. I feel like Mina's was, as usual, not spicy enough for anyone to be offended. But I feel like there's a real
we got on
pushback
board
to
with
this
building
one.
it up.
I appreciate that I was able to come up with the take that was most disagreed with among the three of us.
And that beautiful pink tie. All right, guys, get some sleep. Thank you both for joining my show. Everyone who has not seen the other ones, go check those out. Like them, rate them, review them, all that stuff. Do the same one for this one. Enjoy the start of the football season. Thanks again to you guys. Thanks to all the great producers. Love you, Podville, and we out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.